to welcome all of you to MIGA's flagship panel event on accelerating Sub-Saharan Africa energy access with distributed renewable energy. I'm Ethiopis Tafara, MIGA's Vice President and Chief Risk, Legal, and Sustainability Officer, and I'm pleased to introduce the panelists for today's session. We have Her Excellency Ruth Nankabirwa, Minister of Energy and Mineral Development for Uganda, Riccardo Puliti, Vice President for Infrastructure at the World Bank, Emmanuel Nyirinkindi, Vice President for Cross-Cutting Solutions at IFC, and Hiroshi Matano, who's Executive Vice President for MIGA. Before we begin our panel, let me first set the stage for affordable activities and deliver jobs. It is important for improved quality of life and gender equity, just to name a few things. Yet, large areas of Sub-Saharan Africa remain without access to reliable electricity, and we see a strong correlation with today's most acute challenges of food insecurity, fragility, and inadequate access to healthcare and education. Achieving universal access to reliable and affordable electricity is not just about electricity, but the potential it creates for the citizens of Sub-Saharan Africa. Energy should not be a bottleneck. Instead, it should be an engine of green, resilient, and inclusive development. While significant progress has been made over the last decade, the rate of electrification in Sub-Saharan Africa is nowhere near what is needed to achieve the universal access by 2030. At current rates, only 8 countries are on track for universal access, and several countries would need to wait nearly 100 years to fully electrify. To achieve SDG 7, the pace of electrification needs to triple. National grids will continue to play an important role in energy access, subject to significant policy reforms. However, to quickly reach rural communities and to provide last-mile customers with reliable access in a cost-effective manner, distributed energy solutions such as solar home systems and mini-grids must be rapidly scaled up. This is especially true in countries impacted by fragility, violence, and conflict. The fastest electrifying countries have developed strong enabling environments, encouraged innovation, and crowded in private sector investment. In these countries, private sector-led distributed energy projects have not only accelerated investment in energy access, but have also delivered innovative energy-enabled services for farmers and public facilities, helping reach broader objectives of economic development, food security, and climate resilience. Geospatial modeling reveals that more than 500 million people would be best served by distributed energy technologies, representing at least 40% of new connections. In the FCV context, decentralized energy solutions are often the only hope for expanding access. Most importantly, the least cost approach to universal access can reduce the total cost of electrification by 68% and accelerate timelines. Today, MIGA, together with the World Bank and IFC, is pleased to announce the launch of the new World Bank Group Distributed Access Through Renewable Energy Scale-Up, or DARES, platform. The program's objective is to double the pace of electrification through distributed renewable energy technologies and increase private sector investment by 2026. This can only be done through government ownership of national electrification platforms and close collaboration among donors. The World Bank Group DARES platform focuses on 5 core areas: mini-grids, off-grid solar markets, systems for schools and health facilities, solar irrigation and cold chain for farmers, and innovative business models to displace diesel generation and improve access reliability. The program has a strong private sector focus and aims to assist companies to scale up through improved access to technical assistance, financing, and risk mitigation solutions. With this, let us begin today's panel discussion on accelerating distributed energy in Sub-Saharan Africa. I'd like to pose the first question to Honorable Ruth Nankabirwa, the Ugandan Minister of Energy and Mineral Development. Your Excellency, what is Uganda's vision for expanding energy access, and how would you foresee this program being beneficial?
And good morning to you all. I'm honored to be here this morning, and I'm grateful for the invitation. Uganda's journey has been slow but sure. We started by emphasizing generation, and we have increased the generation capacity, because you cannot talk about access to electricity where you have not generated it. And we allowed the energy mix where we do hydropower, but we also have solar. And you may be aware that Uganda is at the equator, where we have sun almost every day. So we are encouraging investment in mini grids. We have regulation to regulate the mini grids, especially to serve power to the islands, where we have 83 islands which are habitable. So Uganda has the potential, and we have worked out sites for development, about 700 sites, but we have only done 50, only 50 of them. So the problem of extending the grid to the islands will require technology, will require a lot of investment. That's why we encourage solar. Our installed capacity is 1,378 megawatts. But at peak, we are able to use only 800 megawatts. That means there is power generated which is not distributed. So I invite investment in access, and access has to be access to affordable electricity. I am happy that I'm talking about, I'm seated between people who have been helping us, and I appreciate that the World Bank has been helping us to make sure that we get money. But sometimes this money is not cheap, it's not affordable money. And as you know, that the end user tariff depends, or the affordability depends on what you have invested in generation and probably transmission. Generation contributes 60% of the tariff. So if the money you invest in solar power plants is very costly, the end user tariff is going to be like 30 US cents. So what will people of the island, what will people of the communities will do is to resort to cutting down trees, and we all know what that causes. So affordability, I think, has to be enhanced. You may take power to the people, like we have power in Kampala City, but you'll be surprised to see trucks ferrying charcoal into the city, meaning that there is power connected in the city, but people cannot afford cooking with power because it is expensive. So what will happen in the villages? So we have worked out the regulations. We have plans to do bulk purchase. We have plans to bundle the contracts so that we can quicken the program. Right now, access is at 50%, where 19 is on the grid, but 38 is on the off-grid. And we have plans to enhance the access up to 80% by 2025, and probably 100%, inshallah, by 2040. But that can be done if we get access to affordable finances, and if we get investors coming into the country so that we can do multiple projects at a go. The sites that we have waiting for you people are in thousands, 2,200 sites. We have already identified 700 and we want to work on them. And this is where I think I will call upon support to make sure that we walk the talk that we have been advocating for. We really do take power, which is clean, which is affordable, which is reliable, so that we can see tangible developments. We have potential in agriculture. We want to do value addition. We have potential in minerals. We want to do value addition in minerals as well. How I wish that we can see solar panels being manufactured in Uganda. Our investment potential has incentives where we can issue land in the islands if you want to establish a solar power plant. Government has such incentives. Plus infrastructure like roads and water, those are done by government. So I call upon you who are interested in investing in Uganda that you'll find there welcome faces, you'll find there stability. The country is very stable. The people are welcoming, and we are yearning for stable, reliable, and affordable electricity. We have potential for wind. We can do mini-grid for wind in northern Uganda, because northern Uganda is very far, and Karamoja, there is potential for wind. We can do mini-grid for geothermal in the western part, in Kasese. We have 2 sites for geothermal. So we believe in mini-grids, and we have regulations for mini-grids. We have the law, we have the regulations in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Maybe we can turn to Riccardo now. And Riccardo, to achieve universal access, it's critical that we crowd in all types of capital. The World Bank has a long history of working with governments on expanding energy access. It'd be good to hear from you on how you think the bank will leverage its expertise in financing to help governments accelerate electricity access, in particular in relation to renewable energy technologies. And what do you see the role of international partners being in this exercise? With that, over to you, Riccardo.
Ethiopis, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for the question, and I have to say it's a pleasure to meet with the Honorable Minister. I have to say that the problem is quite big. Our calculation, and the World Bank is the custodian of the data on access worldwide, including in Africa, of course. It's a very, very complex challenge. There are around 52% of people in Africa with no access to electricity. But the picture is very different from urban to rural. In reality, in urban area, energy access is around 80%. In rural, it could be as low as 8, 10%, 15% in Somalia, just to make an example. So you see the call today for decentralized renewable energy, I think it's very timely, and I'm very, very pleased that we're all here together. In the last 5 years, the World Bank has invested or financed projects in access for 6 billion. 2.6 out of 6 billion were in decentralized renewable energy. And last year, 2022, we financed 800 million only on decentralized renewable energy. That means 13 million people get finally energy. They look like impressive numbers, but in the reality they are not, because the scale of the challenge means that there are around 700 million people without access to electricity. So there is a lot of work to do. I think that launching theirs today is great, because I think that working together with IFC, MIGA, working together with other development partners, working together with philanthropies, working together with everybody, governments, of course, will make that we can accelerate the solution to this problem. And honestly, what I can see nowadays all over the world is that there is a real concern about energy access as a driver for inequality, as a driver for gender inequality, economic inequality, and all of it. So there is this concern that this is a matter to be addressed, and I'm very, very pleased to see that a lot of actors are getting together. In the particular case of Uganda, and thank you again, Honourable Minister. We are working together with the Uganda government on their electricity scale-up program, which is about doubling the Uganda access in a few years. We are working together with geospatial analysis, trying to find where this investment should be done, and also working on how to use decentralized renewable energy for all uses. For example, farmers. How can it be used for farmers to improve their lives? How can it be used to cool down the food that needs to be stored and at the moment cannot be stored? So there is a lot of work to go on, but I have to say that we will be successful as much as we can work all together and as much as we can attract private sector with solutions that are modern, innovative, but as the Honourable Minister said, also affordable for the end users. Thank you.
Thank you, Riccardo. Let's turn to Emmanuel. I know IFC has been a significant financier in Sub-Saharan Africa. It's played a significant role in mobilizing private finance in Sub-Saharan Africa. Can you say a few words about the plans you have for scaling up financing for distributed renewable energy in Sub-Saharan Africa as part of this joint initiative?
Sure. Thank you, Ethiopis. Ethiopis, IFC, like MIGA and the World Bank, has been and continues to be focused on energy access in Africa. And just building up on the point that the Honourable Minister from Uganda mentioned, the challenge for us all is how we can pick up the pace, accelerate the pace of connecting particularly those who are unserved. And Riccardo gave us some statistics that also the Minister repeated. About 50% of the population is not connected through the grid. So that's the particular challenge that we are trying to address. I think here the technology, its time has come. So solar home systems, distributed renewable energy systems, provide us, I think, an opportunity to connect a huge number of people. And the Minister mentioned the challenge of the islands of Uganda as a case and example. It also provides us an opportunity to provide that power in a clean way. So a very attractive feature. Now, if we think of the numbers, Riccardo gave us a couple of them. We see that the investment needs are huge. About 200 billion is one estimate that has been mentioned. And so at IFC, we think about this space as one where we can crowd in not just international capital, but importantly, domestic capital, which is important for bringing in jobs. So that's a huge opportunity to also be significant in the local economy. We at the IFC have had some experience. If we look back to the early 2000s, by 2009, we had the Lighting Africa program that then expanded into the Lighting Global program. That program was initially aimed at providing solar equipment and has been successful to the tune of about 290 million people have had access to lighting appliances, but also has been able to generate about $2.3 billion into this kind of market. So the question is, how do we then expand on that? So here, I'd like to speak to an experience that we have, which we've been together with MIGA and with the bank, building on that experience with Lighting Global, and building a program that is called Scaling Mini-Grids. This program, I'd like to quote an example of where we have in the DRC, where we are working with the government to tender out an opportunity that would then connect about 2 towns. Those 2 towns would serve about 4 million people. So a real opportunity for us to provide an impact in a space for that renewables are able to bring that impact. I think to the theme of accelerating how we reach out to these people who don't have access, it's very important to consider the power of partnerships. So at IFC, we provide equity and we provide loan and debt financing. It's very important to crowd in other DFIs, Ethiopis, so that's something that we can do so that they provide this capital. But we also need to help to risk these projects and to make them affordable, the point that the Honourable Minister was mentioning. And so bringing in blended finance will require not just government's public financing, but also financing from supporters to the governments, donor governments that fund these programs. And then, if we have the opportunity to crowd in philanthropic capital, that also brings in the pool of affordable capital that we have to bring to these projects. And so, one example I'd like to quote is a recent development with IFC and the Rockefeller Foundation, where they've provided about $150 million that we can leverage to bring another $2 billion into investment. So, crowding in capital, providing local jobs, providing local impact, these are the key.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Hiroshi, we'll turn to you now. You and I have been, for the past 3 years, working on a number of projects where we've provided guarantees for mini-grid and off-grid operators throughout Sub-Saharan Africa. Maybe you can say a few words, and we've gained a certain amount of expertise in this space. Maybe you can say a few words about our plans to scale up private sector financing for distributed renewable energy programs. With that, over to you, Hiroshi.
Ethiopis, thank you. And Minister, again, thank you for joining this panel. Over the years, past 2 years, I think, we had been able to extend 84 million guarantees to the mini-grid solutions, but looking into our pipeline, we quite have a strong pipeline for about 400 million across the developing economies, including Uganda. The reason that we see the increase, I guess, is twofold. One is the technology is here. So Emmanuel mentioned about the new technologies, especially the solar panels, the wind turbines, has become extremely cheap. Also, the technology for connecting people using the phone has become able. So those are the things that's happening on the ground. We've been trying to deploy mini-grids for quite a long time, but at least from a technology point of view, I think there's a solution there. The other new development that we see is really investors. There's a lot of private sector impact investors that we talked over the past few years, but there are folks that's willing to go into the rural countries to deploy these kind of new technologies. So that's really encouraging. Also, we see donors willing to put some grants into the mix. So all these trends are coming together now, and we see that we're seeing that through our pipeline. So that's really the good part of what we think is happening. But as we dig into these projects, we do see challenges. One is coming up is the regulatory kind of framework of the stability for the projects. These mini-grids or off-grid solutions usually do not have PPAs, so there's no fundamental agreement with the government that can frame the projects. So that's something that is new compared to the projects that we've been doing through the IPP model in the past. So there's new challenges that we need to address, and that's where this One World Bank approach is quite important. So to address these challenges, working together with the bank, with IFC, and obviously together with the government, it will be an extremely important element for further deploying the mini-grids into the field. We do think that it is possible, but the coordination, the unique kind of value proposition that World Bank Group can bring, I think will be an important part of further developing this kind of technology into the necessary areas.
I could turn back to you, Riccardo, for a moment and ask a question. You know, the World Bank has already scaled up its support for energy access, including through distributed renewable energy technologies. But now we want to go even faster, right? So can you share a few thoughts on what will be how we're going to do this differently so that we can actually go faster in this space? With that, back to you.
Thank you very much indeed for the question. I think that, as I was saying in my previous intervention, I think we see now more acceptance by governments and by all the other public actors of technologies like decentralized renewables energy as a way to solve the issue of lack of access in rural areas. So I think this is an important step forward, because in the past, governments would always go to old technologies. They would go to diesel, they would go to HFO, they will go to all kinds of fuels that they knew very well, they know how to manage, and they know the technology. I think that what we have seen in the last probably 6, 7, 8 years is the willingness to embrace the new technologies, to understand how they work, and little by little how to regulate them. Because it's not the same thing to regulate solar and regulate other fossil fuels in general. So, and I also see that as solar and wind and other renewables have been embraced, the batteries technology has been embraced as well. And that, of course, creates other problems in terms of regulation. What is the value of storing electricity? What is the price to be paid? So I think that there is an understanding of all of this. I think there is also the willingness to work with all the parties, IFC, MIGA, the World Bank, and of course, other actors, in order to reach solutions that are strong from a legal and regulatory viewpoint, where the legal and regulatory framework is clear, is predictable, and in that way can attract and retain private sector. So what I think is that the World Bank should continue working with government, sharing with them knowledge from other countries, from other regions, from within the same countries sometimes, in order to strengthen models that have been successful and scale them up, really replicate them. I think the strength of a program like, for example, theirs can be, is really in the capacity, in the capability to scale it up. I think that's what we have to do.
One last question. And if you could describe and tell us what you think you see as the biggest challenge in achieving universal access, and how do you plan to address it? And maybe we can start with you, Your Excellency, what you see as being the biggest challenge when it comes to achieving universal access in Uganda.
Thank you very much. Allow me also first to inform you about, because you talked about countries being willing to take on. Uganda is very willing. We amended our 1999 Electricity Act, and we removed the monopoly of a single buyer model, where UETCL, Uganda Electricity Transmission Company, has been the single buyer of electricity. Now you'll be able to generate and sell this electricity to distributors. I think this is going to see us improve the accessibility. We have removed the monopoly, and the demand is rising. But like I said, the new technologies that come by, we need to adapt them. We need to sensitize people to adapt the new technologies. We need to help people through, like in Uganda, we have a company called Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company, which helps build the capacity of SMEs to be able to package their projects very well so that they are bankable, so that they can access money. This is going to see many small groups that are engaged in businesses out there in the communities to take up the facilities as they come by. So technology transfer, and sometimes capacity building, sometimes the staff may not be enough to be all over the country where electricity is needed. But slowly by slowly, we will be able to improve. We've built capacity. Slowly by slowly, every concession that comes to an end returns to government. So government is going to be in the middle of it. We are not going to have middlemen there. Concessions have been coming to an end, and we have been reverting. They have been reverting to government. But with new technologies, with adaptation methodologies, we are going to see access. And I'm grateful for the facility which I'm about to get from the World Bank, the Energy Access Scale-Up project, where I'm going to receive like 400 million US dollars, although I need about 300 million US dollars to take care of the applications that I have every year. Every year. We can no longer suppress demand in Uganda. So a challenge is that the demand is there, but we are moving slowly. But with your support, we hope that we will be there. Thank you.
Maybe we'll turn to you, get your thoughts on what you see as the biggest challenges in achieving universal access.
Sure. So, Ethiopis, the Honourable Minister mentioned the issue of affordability and that being key for increasing uptake. So a key component of affordability is actually the how you finance these projects, and a huge component of them is the foreign exchange piece of it. So it's really critical that we address the issue of local currency and financing these things with increasing amounts of local currency. What we notice is that lots of countries don't have access to deep pools of local currency. So this is one piece where we can provide support. I mentioned the role not just of DFIs in bringing blended finance, the role of development partners and also philanthropic capital to bring affordability. But for local currency in particular, we do have an instrument within the World Bank Group, the private sector window, the local currency facility. So if we can increase the pools of funding available to this, then that's a significant piece we can bring to lowering the cost of this kind of instruments.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Hiroshi, your thoughts on the biggest challenge in achieving universal access?
Yes, thank you. I think distributed power is a global trend. So we do see in the developed countries and also in developing countries that this technology is being deployed. But one of the challenges is really the smallness of the projects. So we do need to improve our processes in deploying these technologies. Our underwriting process, our due diligence process, how we can effectively look into the projects and determine whether it is able to be guaranteed or not. So that's really one of the challenges from the operations side that we see. But at the same time, some of our donors are small, so we do have a trust fund that will help our sponsors or investors to look into this, into the due diligence process. So we want to use our trust fund to facilitate the process of doing due diligence, looking into the bankability of these projects. So those kind of challenges we do think we need to address. But at the same time, as Emmanuel mentioned, as the Minister mentioned, as Riccardo mentioned, there's a huge potential and need in deploying these distributed powers. So we are looking forward to the challenge. But again, it will only be possible through our cooperation with the government and through the One World Bank approach.
Thank you. And Riccardo will give you the last word on this topic.
Yeah, if you want, the challenge I see is also an opportunity. The challenge I see is a fragmentation of many potential financiers and donors, all approaching the same problem in different ways. And that's where theirs comes so well, because it's not only working within the World Bank, but working with others, with philanthropies that are more and more active, with donors, with other bilaterals and multilaterals. So I think if we are able to make sure that the work is more coordinated, country by country, with governments, regions, by working with regional associations, for example, the West Africa Council, Economic Council come to mind, or other institutions like that, be able to scale up. And it goes actually very much in favor of what Hiroshi was saying. If the fragmentation of help generates fragmentation of project, it will be very slow to be able to address the issue of lack of access in rural areas. So working really together, better coordination would help. From a financial viewpoint, I fully agree. There is the matter of due diligence. If we are able to standardize them better, they will cost less and they can be done quicker. Also, bundling up. Why we cannot bundle up some projects in order to make it more financeable, cost less and can be done better. And from a procurement viewpoint, we can get better deals as well. So you see, there are challenges, but I think that we know them. And if we are able to work together, we can really overcome them.
Thank you, Riccardo. My panelists have been very concise and very efficient today. We have time for questions from the audience, which may be a bit of a rarity, but why don't we turn to the audience and see what questions you may have for the panelists here. Yes, we'll get you a mic. Hang on a second.
Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is Vimal Mahendru. I represent an organization called International Electrotechnical Commission. My question to all of you, you mentioned access to technology and technologies can make a difference. What do you see is the role of international consensus standards, and what is World Bank doing right now to make sure that it is aware of what the latest technologies are which can be brought into countries like Uganda? Thank you.
If I start with you on that one, and then turn
if
to
you want,
Emmanuel.
It's a very good question. And the World Bank has always tried to be on top of technologies. Just for you to, or for all of us, not for you obviously, to remember, we were the very first to launch a facility about electrochemical batteries. And through these facilities, we've been able to put a lot of electrochemical batteries on grid, off grid, in Africa and in other countries. And obviously, what we see as also very important is how we can make sure that batteries, for example, can work very well with solar. Standardization. We are fully in support of standards, and we work with several organizations. You realize that standards is not only a legal, juridical concept, it's a technical one, and actually it's conducive to a reduction in cost for technologies. So very much in favor of new technologies. Of course, all technologies that must be cost effective, and always going back to SDG 7, no? Technologies that allows countries to get to secure, affordable, clean and modern energy. So that's really the North Star.
Thank you, Riccardo. Other questions from the audience? Yes, Marcus, I was going to turn to you anyway.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for this. And oh, closer. Okay, sorry. Firstly, thank you all very much indeed. So I'm Marcus Williams. I'm actually with MIGA, and I have a question for Your Excellency.
Marcus.
Speak up?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is the role of the utility in this transition, because I think that depending on how you look at it, distributed energy can be very complementary to what the utility is trying to do, and gives them a chance to focus on other sort of aspects of their mandate. But it could also be threatening, I think, as well. And so I wondered if you had any thoughts about how to manage that tension domestically. How do you help the utility find a way to welcome in distributed energy as opposed to perhaps sort of resist it?
And maybe this is a question we can ask both to Her Excellency as well as Riccardo. Managing the perception of threat to the utility from a practical standpoint, and Riccardo, from your experience working across the globe. We'll start with you, Riccardo, and then turn to Her Excellency.
No, it's fine. I think it's a fair question. It's a fair question all over the world. It's not a question for the developing world. It's a question worldwide. The incumbent, no, that's what it's called in reality. The incumbent will always feel threatened by changes, and the incumbent usually have the contacts, the historical contacts with government and local and central government to defend their position. And actually, you see, this is one of the major causes of concern, The concern is the resistance to new technologies, sometimes driven from not knowing the technology, but sometimes having vested position that are not ready to accept the arrival of private companies or to have a more, what can I say, a more vivacious power market. I think this is really the work of governments with, if they want, the advice of the World Bank and MIGA and IFC to be able to explain even to the incumbent that they also have to learn to gain from having new technologies, that having a dominant position is not good in order to provide the best product, the most affordable product to governments, public sector, and end users alike. So we have to think like what is best from a fiscal viewpoint, what is best from an end user viewpoint, and act on that decisively, I would say.
Thank you, Riccardo. Your Excellency, how has this played out in Uganda? Has it played out, or is it playing out in terms of the threat the utility feels from these kinds of new technology?
Thank you very much. Uganda appreciates that thank you very much. Uganda appreciates the fact that science is the savior, and we have changed our policies to enhance science and technology, right from the lowest level, right from schools, where we even have different salaries for scientists. So when new technologies come up, and we also appreciate the relationship that we've been having with the World Bank. We know the conditions, we know the standards that they set up, and we also appreciate the reality. You cannot stay where you are in this new era of transition. You have to accept that. But we are saying that we have to be appreciated. The challenges that we are faced with must be appreciated so that we are not pushed too hard to leapfrog. We have to be nurtured, we have to be understood, we have to appreciate the time frames that we set ourselves. But we agree that we are walking a journey which has the same destination, and we have to reach that destination without casualties. So Africa and Uganda is not allergic to these new technologies, and we are making sure that in all the sectors, because I'm also in charge of mineral development, we want to use the minerals, the green minerals, to help the energy sector. So we are not allowing exportation of unprocessed minerals anymore in Uganda. We want new technology to merge, the mineral sector and the energy sector, and it can happen. So we are ready, and we are working with you, and we appreciate the innovations, and we commit ourselves to that.
Thank you. It's appropriate, Your Excellency, that we give you the last word, and that's the perfect note on which to end this panel. Let me thank each of the panelists for their contribution today. Thank you very much, and thank all of you for joining us. On behalf of the World Bank Group team, we're very enthusiastic about the potential for universal energy access in Africa and new innovative approaches under development. When we all get together next year at COP28, we hope to present you with successes of this pilot initiative and solutions that will scale up under the DARES program. Thank you very much, everybody.